Hey everyone, this is Quentin Figueroa with SlayerMint.com, and in this video I want to talk to you about how single moms choose to be single moms. So we hear a lot about how single moms are kind of praised and heralded as champions for being independent and brave and able to raise a child on their own and be this kind of thing, right, without the need of somebody else. But I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at it, and I think there's actually a lot of kind of things to point out in opposition to this, and I kind of wanted to go through with that, and I wanted to show that the responsibility of being a single mom is something that the mom chose, that she put on herself, rather than her being a victim of somebody else kind of forcing it on her, like a man forcing her to be a single mom. It's her choice to be that. And I know a lot of people kind of view it a different way, or they'll press up against that and kind of put her as a victim, but it's just not really the case if you look at it and think about it. So let's explore that. Okay, so in general, when it comes to relationships, women have the upper hand on guys. So women, when they're younger, they're more attractive when they're younger, right? From like their late teens to their early 30s and that kind of thing. Women, it's kind of their prime. That's when they're most fertile to have children genetically, biologically. And that's kind of their prime time to attract a decent guy and to kind of get things in order and that type of stuff. And then guys, on the other hand, they kind of, so their value in a relationship isn't as much bearing children, but it is providing resources in general. Of course, there are exceptions, and I'm kind of generalizing, but this is kind of how it usually works. And so the guys provide resources, and the guys' value kind of increases with time. Like guys will become, guys can be just as valuable in their 40s to a younger woman than like a 40-year-old woman to a younger guy, because as women get older, they can't have children. But as guys get older, they can still have children, they can still get women pregnant, and they can still provide resources. And in general, older guys usually have more resources than younger men. So it's kind of like a reverse situation where women, their sexual value goes kind of down with time as they get older, and men's kind of goes up with time as they get older because they get more resources. So you have to kind of understand this when looking at the relationship between men and women and that kind of thing. So women have a lot of value when they're younger. So they have a different criteria than men, right? So women need to utilize this advantage they have of beauty, fertility, and this type of thing. They need to use that to their advantage while they can. So when they're getting hit on by a lot of men, they need to understand that this isn't going to last forever, and that they need to actually find a decent guy that's going to last with them, into the future. They need to find a guy that's going to have longevity and commitment and this type of thing. So yeah, you need to make good decisions about who you choose and this type of thing. And I think a lot of women know this, and most women are taught this when they're younger. And that's why you have a lot of married women that do exactly this, and they end up living fairly happy lives with children and this type of thing. And as they get older, the guy continues to love them and provide for them, and they're able to develop themselves and all this stuff. And that's kind of how it generally works. But now with single moms, it's different, right? So single moms is a different situation. So rather than actually finding a guy who's going to last with them a while and kind of has good qualities, they go more for appearance, or kind of more of an immediate thing, more of a sexual gratification or like an ego gratification, rather than a long-term kind of family gratification. So single moms kind of have a little bit different view on this, and in a way you could say it's less wise, right? Single moms are kind of making it's more of a short-term choice as opposed to a long-term choice. And because of that, it's going to affect their future, and it's just going to affect their life and the way that their relationship works, right? So obviously if you go with a guy who's just like a complete asshole and doesn't want a relationship, just wants to have sex, just wants to bang as many women as possible, that type of guy is probably not marriage material. And again, totally fine if you want to have sex with them and do your thing and have fun or whatever, but when you want to now, when you think that you can have a child with a guy like this and that it's going to somehow work out in the future, that's not a very wise decision as a woman. And married women know this, which is why they avoid guys like this when it comes to marriage or a long-term committed relationship. And single moms know this too, but they don't care, and they kind of put up with the consequences of it, but then offload those consequences onto other people to make them feel sorry for their bad decisions. And that's why I'm saying it's a choice that single moms make, even though they try to offload it and make other people feel guilty for that choice that they made and that they're somehow a victim, when the married women aren't victims of, you know, that because they didn't make that choice. So it's just single moms kind of want to get the best of both worlds, and it's a contradiction, and it's kind of a problem. So yeah, in that way, single moms, you know, more or less go kind of for alpha men. They go for men that a married woman wouldn't really necessarily go for because she knows it's not going to work out. You know, a married woman might go more for a beta man that she knows is going to provide for her and kind of last. So she'll compromise in a way on kind of this appearance biological piece, knowing that in the future it's going to work out better because of that, where a single mom is going to compromise on the longevity in the future, and she'll go more for an alpha guy that's going to gratify her right now in the short term, maybe for that week. So it's a totally different choice, and it's something that determines the difference between a married and a single mom. It determines the future. These choices are completely your own, and they determine what's going to happen, you know, and wise people generally make better choices. And in this regard, a married mom is making more wise choices than a single mom. And yeah, it's you know this because married moms, they prioritize around children and the family, because that's kind of the whole point of marriage and family, is to have children and then to be there and help raise those children and teach them things and all this, and you know, grow them into the future. Where a single mom isn't prioritizing around children. Children is more kind of an accident or a mistake or an oops type thing, where it wasn't like, they don't go into it thinking what's going to be best for the children. They think what's going to be best for me. And if children happen, that's an accident that somehow other people need to now help me take care of. So it's just a different mindset, and you can see how single moms, they want the best of both worlds. They don't want to compromise on their instant gratification, yet they want to have still the consequences of it work out okay. So yeah, as I talked about, the value, the sexual value for a woman goes down with time, and for a man it goes up with time. And married women know this, which is why they prioritize around it, right? So if you're 20 and you're a woman, and there's a guy who right now in your 20s and he's 20, and he might not be like you might be able to get a much more attractive guy or a much cooler guy or something right now in your 20s, so you might kind of go with that. And then there also might be like a 20-year-old guy that maybe he's not as attractive, but maybe he's building a business, maybe he's working on himself, maybe he's exercising and working on things to where in the future he's gonna be a good guy, and he's gonna be kind of the perfect guy for you at, say, age 35. But so a married mom would see this, and they would see the qualities in the man who's 20 that not a lot of women see, and they would kind of prioritize around this type of guy, knowing that in the future he's going to be exactly the ideal guy for them. Where a single mom would more so just go after kind of a 20-year-old that's attractive and more of an alpha guy, even knowing, or maybe not even thinking about, that in the future when he's 35 he's going to be the exact opposite of the type of guy she wants, and that she should have gone more for the guy who was not as appealing when she was younger, but who gets more appealing as they age and grow and develop a family, right? So this again comes back to wisdom, and it's a choice. And married women, married moms, they make this better choice, at least better choice in the sense of raising a family and having security with the man and this type of thing, which is pretty biologically natural and normal, and I think most people would say is good. And single moms don't do this as much. And if you get down to it, there are two main reasons why single moms are in fact single. One is what I've been talking about. They picked a bad man to begin with, right? So if you pick a bad guy and he's not going to work out too well, that's your choice, right? The guys are usually hitting on you. You get to discern which guy you want to be with. And there's a huge number of choices. And if you prioritize around a bad guy, that's your choice, right? So that's number one on why women end up as single moms. Number two is because maybe they do pick a good guy, but they themselves aren't good, or they don't kind of have qualities of virtue and integrity, so they scare the good guy away, right? So the guy's with them, he's an awesome guy, but after maybe a few weeks or a month or whatever, he's like, okay, this person really isn't the highest quality person. I don't want to be with her. I want to go look for a more high quality woman. So they leave her, right? So again, this is why most single moms are single. One, they pick a bad guy, or two, they scare a good guy away, right? And then obviously married moms do the opposite of this. They pick good guys and they don't scare away good guys. So these are all choices. It's not some random thing that happens to you. It's something that you create and choose yourself. Okay, so we hear about kind of children and unplanned children, as if like children somehow are something that a married mom has now that she has to deal with. A single mom has. So let's say a single mom has children now, and it's something that she has to deal with, and this is a problem. But again, there's no such thing as unplanned children. So children are a choice that a married or single mom has, and it's something that you chose to do, and now it's kind of it's your thing that you have to deal with. So yeah, sure, a woman might get raped or something like this where it's not necessarily planned, but that's like a rare exception. The majority of women who have children, it's not some type of unwanted rape. It's a choice to have sex and to know the consequences of possibly having sex and having children. So every time you have sex, you have a risk of getting pregnant as a woman, and women know this. And if you have an unplanned child, it's not unplanned. It's you having sex, taking a risk, knowing that you might get a child. So if you're nervous about having unplanned children, don't have sex, or at least take the measures to make sure that you don't get pregnant. It's not that complicated, and there's really no such thing as unplanned children. So yeah, so the question then is, why then would a single mom have sex with a man who's going to leave, right? It's your choice to have sex with him and know that you might get pregnant. And in most cases, a lot of single moms want to get pregnant. But why do you want to have a child if you know the father's not going to be there and he's going to leave? And why are you going to pick a guy who will leave? These are all choices. And again, married moms don't do this. They make good choices. They know the father's not going to leave, which is why they're still married. Single moms, they don't know how to pick a good guy, or they scare a good guy away, which is why they have children, and then the guy takes off. And then they wonder like, oh, wow, what happened? I'm with this child or these children, and what am I supposed to do about that? But it's not the man's fault. You chose him. And yeah, of course, there are complete asshole guys and things like that. And I'm not saying it's always the woman's fault and that kind of thing. But it's not always the man's fault. And women need to take responsibility for choosing the guys, especially when they have the upper hand of guys always hitting on them when they're younger. Again, it's a lot easier for a 40-year-old guy to pick up a woman than it is for a 20-year-old guy, and vice versa. It's a lot easier for a 20-year-old woman to pick up a guy than a 40-year-old woman. So when the ball is in the woman's table, she needs to be wise and make a good decision with that, because it gets easier for the guys. And if you're messing around choosing stupid guys, you're only hurting women. It's the guy's not losing, and you're losing, and it's just sad. And stop doing it. Because yeah, men will do anything or say anything to sleep with a woman. That's just the way guys are, and they don't care about that. So women need to be smart about that and need to actually put up the rules on what is okay and what's not. And if not having sex is the way to move forward with a guy, then you should do that to determine that it's a good guy. And if a guy won't be with you if you won't have sex with him, then he's probably a loser to begin with, and you shouldn't be with him. And you need to be wise about it and actually be conscious about how you're going to create your future with this type of thing. It's just the difference between a married woman and a single woman is really the wisdom of them, and just the way that they can see kind of into the future, and the way that their time preference is for kind of immediate versus kind of postponed gratification, right? So yeah, the whole child thing is a choice, and that's something that the women are choosing. So there's no such thing as unplanned children, and if you have a child, that's your choice to have it, and now you need to take the responsibility for that. Okay, there is one more kind of piece to this, and that is the welfare state. So the welfare state basically perpetuates and caters to single moms. So it basically rewards single mom behavior and punishes married mom behavior. So yeah, this gives single moms the best of both worlds. So they get resources, which they usually get from a guy, but in this case, now they get them from the state. So they get resources from the state, but then they still get to be with the men they want, even if they leave them, because they don't need to depend on a guy to provide resources anymore. They can just depend on the state, who taxes beta men in general to give their money, and then they just get that money given to them. So this allows single moms to go after kind of more alpha men that aren't going to be as better long-term for them, but it doesn't matter, because once the alpha man leaves, they get money from the state, which is subsidized through taxes by mostly beta men. So it just kind of makes sense. And that's it's going to perpetuate that behavior, and it's actually a really good thing for alpha guys, because then they're able to just because most women now are going to be going for alpha men, because it doesn't matter if the alpha man leaves them or does anything like that, and they don't need to go kind of for a long-term beta guy who's going to be kind of more financially good for them long-term. So they can just go for kind of the guy they want, and when he leaves, they just have the state kind of step in as if it was the guy providing the resources. So it just creates this huge imbalance and problem that's not normally talked about, and it should be talked about. But of course it can't go on forever, and eventually the state will kind of run out of money, and then the dynamic is going to have to shift, where women are going to have to go back to actually decent guys that can provide for them long term, and the guys that are just kind of losers and who just kind of play women, they're going to not get as many women, because it's just they can't be with a guy like that anymore when they're not getting money from the state. They're going to need money somehow. They're going to need a guy to provide for them when they're pregnant or when they're raising their child, staying home with them, and it's not going to be an alpha guy who's gone. So they're going to have to go now for those kind of other guys, and that's going to be the dynamic that will change once the welfare state starts to run out of money. And it's interesting, because if you were to actually take the reverse of this dynamic and put it, so right now kind of the welfare state is in women's favor. Women in general want kind of resources, they want a guy to kind of provide for them, and they want kind of a strong man to do these things for them. But if you have the reverse of that, let's say you're to favor it in guy's favor, right? So a guy, they want sex. So if you were to every week give men 1 or 2 women to have sex with, and that was provided by the government, how many men do you think now would want to be in actual relationships, committed relationships with women? There wouldn't be a lot, because they would get kind of the sex that they want, at least kind of the more the loser guys, right? The alpha or whatever, the kind of the non-relationship long-term men who want to grow, but just the guys who want sex, which is a lot of men. Those people would be getting what they want, the exact same way single moms are getting what they want, and they wouldn't change their behavior either, and they would now vote for the state, and they would vote for welfare, and they would vote for this because they're getting sex provided for them by the government, and they have no reason to go actually change themselves and persuade and impress an actual woman that's not provided by the state. So it would then create a bad dynamic too in the case of men, and women would not like this at all. But this is exactly what's happening with men and with single moms in the welfare state. It's just kind of the reverse of this, and it's appealing to women's needs and this type of thing. And that's why it's an interesting kind of problem and thing to consider and think about. But yeah, it's a great deal for women right now, so why would they need anything else? But at the end of the day, people make choices, and they reap receive the consequences of those choices. And every decision you make, there's pros and cons to it, right? You can make good decisions and you can make bad decisions. And, based on the decisions you make, you're going to get back the result of those decisions. And when married women make the decision to be long-term and to be married and to find decent men, they reap the consequences of that. When single moms choose kind of the men that they're with, and when the guy leaves them, and when the whole situation perpetuates over and over again of finding a man, having the guy leave, having the guy and the woman get together, both use each other, and then leave again, wonder what's going on. Those are all choices, and those are consequences of those choices, right? Married moms can see how that ends, which is why they don't do it. Single moms, they might be able to see how it ends, but they don't care, or they might not be able to see how it ends. They're just not wise enough to even see that. And but either way, they're getting the consequences of that. So we can't say that single moms are victims, or that it's something that accidentally happens, or we shouldn't even really praise the behavior, because that's not good behavior for a family and for society, right? If you want to actually have a society and you want to raise children and you want to do kind of these things we're biologically geared to do, being a single mom isn't the way to do it. It's not very smart. And the smart thing is to be with in a relationship where you can grow and raise the children. I mean, everybody knows, maybe not everybody, but it's scientifically true and established that 2 parents is better than 1 parent. So for children. And if you want to raise good children, then you should have 2 parents that are working together in kind of a mutual way, rather than a single parent that's worse off for the child. So yeah, and single moms are choosing to do this, and they're not victims, and they're not somehow randomly getting there. These are choices, and choices that married women aren't making to get there. So this is just something that needs to be said. And yes, it is extremely obvious, but it's not so obvious to single moms, which is why they need to hear it. It's a choice, and the consequences of those choices are very real, and it's something that they bring upon themselves. So thank you very much for listening, everyone, and have a great day.